Hello, welcome back to the Ventura County SELPA's Pathways to Success Dispute Prevention and Resolution series. As we move forward in this series, our focus remains on providing the essential skills needed to enhance communication and collaboration within the IEP process and within the IEP team. Whether you are an IEP facilitator or a team member, these sessions are designed to help you navigate meetings in a way that is consistently productive and student-focused. By applying these proactive strategies, you can often prevent conflict before it even arises. However, should a disagreement arise, these tools empower the team to reach a resolution while maintaining a strong, trusting relationship between families and schools. Today's session continues that mission, offering ready-to-use techniques and strategies that you can apply immediately to foster a truly collaborative environment for student success.
Thanks, Peter, for getting us started. My name is Stacy Alvey, and I serve as the team's director.
And my name is Peter Aguirre. I'm the team's program specialist. Our vision is to build understanding, strengthen relationships, and achieve student-centered solutions. We're here to help foster a partnership between families and schools that supports the success of every student. You can learn more about the Ventura County SELPA's Dispute Prevention and Resolution Services by going to our website at the link provided on the presentation, or by going to the SELPA's website at vcselpa.org, spelled VCSELPA.org. Today's presentation is going to be focusing on trust-building behaviors. You can access registration for the remaining sessions through the Ventura County SELPA's Professional Development Calendar, which you can access on the SELPA's website. The presentation slides will be available once the recorded video has been uploaded to the Ventura County Office of Education's YouTube channel and placed under the video descriptions below. So you can now watch the first 6 webinars in this series currently, and we'll be having all of them uploaded by the end of the series. So let's move along to the next, our introduction, and get us started with this topic today. Today, we're going to talk about trust-building behavior. Last session, we talked about conflict management strategies and how to put many of those skills we taught into practice during the IEP meeting. Today's focus will be how we can build and maintain trust with families as the team works together to support the student. The items discussed today will highlight steps to take before, during, and after the IEP meeting to keep the trusting relationship going. Additionally, when tensions run high, this is another critical moment to lean into trust-building behaviors. While the natural human response is to become defensive or to shut down in those situations, choosing to remain open and empathetic can serve as a de-escalation tool that shifts the dynamic from a confrontation to more of like a partnership, and may prove that the group's commitment to the student's success is more important than their own ego in each individual person's ego. As a result of today's webinar presentation, you'll be able to identify behaviors and strategies that are trust building, identify behaviors that damage trust, and what to do to avoid these behaviors, identify facilitated behaviors that encourage team members to utilize trust-building behaviors, and identify facilitated behaviors that discourage trust-damaging behaviors. Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, said, "Trust is built in drops and lost in buckets." This doesn't mean that trust has to be an exhausting or time-consuming ordeal. Rather, it reminds us that trust is the result of small, purposeful actions that make others feel safe. Relationships are fragile, and without mindful effort, that hard-earned trust can be lost quickly. The fact that you are here today reflects your commitment to this process. It does show that genuine desire to be the kind of team member or facilitator who prioritizes those drops, so to speak, and doing that by intentionally building and maintaining, and when necessary, repairing the trust that allows the IEP team to thrive. Now, we can recognize that educators They're under extremely intense and extreme pressure. Under such pressure, it's understandable why some educators may unintentionally fall into some of the common pitfalls that have the potential to damage trust with families. We'll take a closer look at each of these individually and examine what educators may realistically do to foster and improve that trust. Conflict often starts with a simple lack of information or insufficient communication. When we rely on educational jargon or only reach out during mandatory times like IEP meetings and parent-teacher conferences, we risk leaving parents in the dark. In that silence, with lack of communication, anxiety can grow and assumptions are easily made. To support this area, it is vital to communicate with the family in some manner outside of those formal settings. So it's in addition to that, right? This could be a short message on your parent communication platform or a quick progress update. The frequency is really up to you, but really the idea is that the goal is to simply provide enough regular touch points so that the parent has a general idea of how their child is doing at school, rather than wondering what is happening day to day. And along with the communication that keeps the parent in the know, if the only time the parent sees your name in the inbox is for a call about a concern, and can create a type of phone call dread. Parents may begin to view every notification from the school as a withdrawal from their emotional bank or relationship bank rather than a deposit. Of course, we know that this isn't the case or the intention. You really see the whole student and their many successes, but without that consistent positive contact, a parent may begin to feel as though their child is only being viewed through a negative lens. They might even worry that the school has developed a biased or difficult relationship with them, which can eventually lead to them avoiding your calls altogether. Now, this distance can be compounded when a parent perceives a delay as unresponsiveness. In the high-pressure world of the school day, we know a delayed reply simply means you are balancing a dozen competing priorities. However, in a parent's world, that silence can be interpreted in several ways. It might signal that their child isn't a priority, or it might be felt as a sign of indifference, which we know is not the case, but is just what can be perceived. Even with a brief acknowledgement, a quick "I received your message and will get back to you by Thursday," that can bridge that gap. To maintain that trust, try to respond as quickly as is realistically possible and make every effort to call when you say you will. If you realize a call will be late, a simple update to the parent can go a long way in preventing those negative interpretations. Like, "Hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going to be 5 minutes late." Something as simple as that. Even if you're close to the agreed upon time, that little message can go a long way. When a parent does finally reach out with a concern, it's important that the educator doesn't invalidate that parent's concern. With the best of intentions to alleviate a parent's anxiety, educators sometimes say things like, "Your child doesn't do that for me," or "I haven't seen that," or "That's just typical behavior." And the challenge with that is it may be perceived that you are telling the parent that their lived experience, what they're seeing, doesn't matter or is even exaggerated. This may risk turning a shared problem into a defensive you versus them battle. This next point aligns with a larger practice that can either build or harm trust. It lies in the commitments we make and our follow through on those commitments. We have to look at whether there is alignment between our words and our actions. Stated simply, we want to avoid a say-do discrepancy. So to minimize this gap, it's vital to hold yourself and your team accountable for what was promised. We will touch on this specific strategy later in this session, but it's really to help increase the likelihood of a successful follow-through. That's what's going to be important. However, we also know that things change. When a situation evolves, ongoing communication is key. Simply notify the parent of a new development goes a long way. If a change in direction happens on the school side, it is best to come prepared with alternatives and collaborate on next steps. Ultimately, these behaviors stem from a failure to treat parents as a collaborative partner. If educators approach IEP meetings as a presentation of information where they are the sole experts, they really are missing an important piece of data, the parent's expertise on their own child. And when parents perceive that they are not treated as collaborative partners, a trust gap develops.
Thanks, Peter. There are a number of reasons why a trust gap exists between schools and parents. From the emotional stakes of discussing a child's future to parents perceiving that school is just trying to gatekeep their child from receiving needed services, there's many reasons. So let's talk about these in a bit more detail. Parents want their child to be successful, and parents even want their child to be more successful than they've been. Finding out a child has a disability, as you know, isn't just a medical event. It can be a profound emotional shift that rocks a parent's world. And for some parents, it can take a lifetime to deal with the complex emotions of continually witnessing their child's educational struggles, including the social struggles that are a part of education. Everyone handles grief differently, and for some, advocacy helps to balance those feelings of helplessness. Although parents may not be educators, they certainly understand what it means to teach a child. They've been teaching from the beginning of their child's life, and that level of expertise deserves recognition. Both parents and educators need to feel valued and respected for their commitment to the child in order for productive conversations to happen. And when people don't feel appreciated for their efforts, the trust gap widens. The trust gap can really grow both ways. So think about it for a moment. Think about what it feels like for a parent to sit at a table with a group of trained educators. They can often feel outnumbered, leaving them feeling powerless. Educators have the system knowledge, the acronyms, the data, and the sheer numbers in front of them at the table. And parents, well, they only have their lived experience and deep emotional investment. This imbalance can naturally breed defensiveness. We've heard highly educated parents share that a sense of powerlessness existed when they were attending an IEP meeting in the role of a parent instead of in their daily role as an educator or an attorney, a technology specialist. These are just some examples of the people that we've heard that from. Even educators who hold a different opinion may sometimes feel that they can't express anything different than what another staff member has communicated and believed. We'll talk more about it in just a bit about how to reduce the sense of imbalance to help you as a meeting facilitator build trust among the team members. But first, let's examine a few other concepts that contribute to the trust gap between schools and parents. When an imbalance of information exists and parents find it difficult to meaningfully participate in the IEP meeting, the trust will definitely be impacted. School staff has an opportunity to review assessment data and formulate opinions and recommendations ahead of the IEP meeting. Without this same opportunity, parents can feel like they're not able to fully participate in the conversation and then become nothing more than recipients of information. A personal conversation with assessors ahead of the meeting to discuss at least a summary of findings will help parents to feel that a symmetry of information exists. One of the most common reasons parents may feel sidelined is the sense that school staff may have already met and decided on goals, placements, and service hours before the official meeting starts. It doesn't mean that that's occurred. We hope that hasn't occurred. That would not be legal, but sometimes that's a perception parents feel. They can perceive this even when it's not the case. But it's really important for an efficient meeting that staff do come, have having had an opportunity to formulate some thoughts, right? That's really important. So being transparent that this is the case and that as a team, that means including the parent, the student's education plan will be developed is essential. If a parent hasn't seen the evaluation data or progress reports until the moment they sit down, think about it. They're forced to process complex information in real time while being asked to make potentially life-altering decisions. Educators can run the risk that parents perceive that they're merely trying to keep from providing services to their child, especially if they don't have an understanding of the benefits or the concepts such as least restrictive environment, inclusive practices, right? Efforts to help staff and parents understand the positive impact of these practices helps all team members. So we've discussed quite a bit. Our intention is not to discourage you. We know you're working hard to fulfill your responsibilities, and sometimes the needs may seem greater than your ability to provide. While trying to be sensitive and mindful about your experiences, we still think that it's important and it's worth drawing your attention to what doesn't help build trust and what might possibly contribute to a loss of trust. You see, when the IEP team, when that process breaks down, it's rarely just a disagreement over, let's say, the minutes or the goals. It's a number of occurrences that contribute to a flood of emotion. When a trust gap forms between parents and school staff, the brain's survival mechanisms often take over, leading to a state known as emotional flooding. As the trust gap widens, every interaction can become filtered through suspicion. And once flooding begins, productive collaboration can become nearly impossible for both sides. Trust is rebuilt through small, consistent acts. And acknowledging mistakes, that can be hard, but acknowledging them or being transparent can actually reduce flooding because it removes the mystery that fuels anxiety. We'll next examine some core needs all people have and educators can address to prevent conflict from occurring and rebuild trust when it appears that conflict is brewing. In their book, Beyond Reason, Using Emotions as You Negotiate, authors Roger Fisher and Daniel Shapiro of the Harvard Negotiation Project identified 5 core concerns humans need to have met in order that need to be met in challenging conversations. These concerns are often unspoken, but are no less real than tangible interests, like a child's educational progress and social inclusion, for example. When addressed effectively by a facilitator, trust can be built because negative emotions are effectively addressed. Again, all people have the need to feel a sense of appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, and role. We're going to take a closer look at each one of these areas.
All right. Thank you, Stacy, for setting us up on these core concern areas. So at the core of every strong relationship is the fundamental need to feel appreciated. When we take the time to acknowledge each other's efforts, it does more than just make us feel good. It's actually a powerful motivator. Genuine appreciation reinforces the collaborative behaviors we want to see, encouraging everyone to stay engaged and invested. By making appreciation a standard part of our communication, it creates a positive feedback loop that makes the team more resilient when difficult topics eventually arise. We often think of appreciation as a feeling, but in the context of the IEP meeting and the IEP, appreciation is actually going to be used as an action word. So think for a moment about a time you felt truly appreciated for your work. You likely felt a strong connection to that person and a greater desire to collaborate with them. That is the same exact environment we want to create for our families and our colleagues. When a team member feels heard and valued, they are much more likely to remain open and productive. even when the team faces a difficult decision. So when a parent shares information from an outside provider, thanking them for that contribution signals that you value them as a partner in the data gathering process. It's important to offer this appreciation even if the outside information doesn't perfectly align with what the school sees. By acknowledging the report, you aren't necessarily agreeing with everything that's found in that report. Rather, you are validating that the information is important to the parent. This simple act prevents a battle of the experts and provides that your shared commitment to the student is more important than whose data is right or going to be interpreted best. A statement such as, "Thank you for sharing this information with the group. We truly appreciate your willingness to bring what you've gathered." Looking at all these different sources of information provides more perspectives on what supports can be considered for Sarah. So as the meeting progresses, find merit in what each person has to say, even if the team isn't in full agreement on a specific goal or service or whatever. But acknowledging the intent or the insight behind a person's comment prevents the us versus them dynamic. It keeps the focus on the student rather than the disagreement. For example, maybe the parent is hoping for a significant amount of OT services. You might say something along the lines of, "I hear you want Sarah to make continued progress on her fine motor skills. Your dedication to finding that right amount of support has been helpful as we strive for that growth." So let's take a look at the data together to see how we can best structure her time to ensure she is both receiving the support and getting enough opportunities to practice those skills where they matter most. See, this keeps the conversation focused on the need, while also highlighting the merit of the parent's desire. And finally, ensure you provide meaningful appreciation at the conclusion of the meeting. A session that ends with a sincere acknowledgement reinforces the relationship and sets the tone for the months of work ahead. You might say something like, "Thank you for your time and for your advocacy of your child. This IEP is a plan, but it really takes a true partnership between school staff and parents to make a lasting impact." See, this ensures that everyone leaves the room feeling like a respected member of the team. It makes the next meeting and all the communication in between that much more successful because you've closed the loop with a deposit into that relationship bank account. And every person needs to feel that they belong and that their voice matters. In an IEP setting, creating this sense of affiliation with the team is a crucial first step. When people feel a true affiliation with the group, they form a natural desire to work together, even when making difficult decisions. However, the traditional structure of these meetings can sometimes make parents feel like they're simply there to receive information from a panel of experts. As facilitators, we can encourage staff to build this affiliation right from the start by asking parents one simple question ahead of the meeting, which is, "What can we do to help you feel a part of this IEP meeting?" This statement can go a long way into breaking down the expert versus guest dynamic. It signals immediately that the parent is an equal member of the conversation and a critical part of the team's affiliation. To move from a group of individuals to a unified team, we have to intentionally build a sense of belonging. This starts with looking for common interests. As facilitators, we should always be searching for shared commitments or interests, like a student's specific strength, to create a positive momentum that helps the team weather difficult conversations later. We also build belonging through how we show up. Modeling informal introductions, such as using first names, can break down that expert versus guest barrier. You can even help a parent craft their own introductory statement so that they feel they are on equal footing from the very first minute. Physical space matters too. Be thoughtful about seating arrangements. Whenever possible, try to sit side by side rather than like a divide on the table. If a parent is sitting next to a provider they have had disagreements with, they may feel a sense of me against them. A strategic seat change can shift energy towards us working together. As you guide the team, your goal is to uncover underlying interests. Instead of arguing over specific asks, we want to have open discussions about what is truly important to the parent and to the LEA, focusing on how we, the group, or they, the group, can meet those core needs helps the team find creative options that a standard debate might miss. And finally, remember that connection happens best in person. Whenever possible, talk or meet face-to-face to build that relationship. And reserve email primarily for following up on those conversations. You see, face-to-face conversations allow for immediate clarification. It also minimizes misinterpretation of text-based correspondence. And then it also gives another layer of connection. So beyond belonging, people have a fundamental need for autonomy, the feeling that they have a choice in the process and are not being forced into predetermined outcomes. In an IEP meeting, this can be challenging. Parents may arrive believing the document must reflect their exact requests, while staff may feel pressured to stick strictly to what their proposed draft might look like. However, the intent of the law is clear. The team must work collaboratively to design the program. After the team has had the opportunity to build a picture of the whole child and identify the needs of that child, the LEA ultimately does hold the responsibility to offer a free and appropriate public education. This is where we encounter the autonomy paradox. This happens when one person exercises their own autonomy so intensely that they effectively strip it away from everyone else at the table. When a team member, whether a parent or staff member, digs in their heels with an "it must be my way" stance, that can stop the collaborative process and actually is likely going to. As a facilitator, your job in that moment is to shift the energy and generate momentum towards continued collaboration while ensuring each individual feels like they are truly part of the decision-making process. And we actually have a webinar series, the previous one, webinars 6, that goes over how to do conflict management, especially when both parties are in impasse. So really, to do that, we have to move beyond the theory of autonomy and to look at practical ways we build the genuine partnership during that meeting. Instilling a desire for all participants to feel like true partners in the decision-making process begins before the meeting even starts. When possible, share data, reports, draft documents with parents ahead of time so they can review what will be discussed during the meeting. By doing this, school staff can remove the element of surprise and give parents the necessary space to process the information. This ensures that the parent is informed and helps balance the conversation from the moment they walk in. We recognize that providing data in advance is not always feasible. And do the best you can while following your specific district procedures and protocols. So when you hear this, we encourage you to take this concept back to your leadership to see how it can best be incorporated into your current practices. And so once this meeting begins, it's important to continually rely on interests, a concept we've covered through this webinar series. You can keep the dialogue productive by focusing on interests rather than those fixed positions. Instead of debating the what, help the group explore the why. This often reveals shared goals that might otherwise go unrecognized. Also, when you name the interest, it shows that you're getting to the heart of the concern or the desire. It demonstrates that you are not just hearing words, but truly listening to what is important to that person. And part of this involves creating a safe environment where a parent can disagree or share a different perspective without feeling like they're causing any inconvenience. This is where our previous focus on appreciation and belonging is so critical. When educators embrace these disagreements as a natural part of the process, it strengthens the final outcome by allowing the group to fully explore possibilities and consider what's truly important. So as the facilitator, you also want to help the group move beyond simple sharing school developed plans, because that's not what this is, right, in the IEP meeting. You actively encourage input, clarification, and the sharing of new ideas. In doing so, you open the door to solutions that the team may not have discovered individually. It also communicates the team's desire to use the IEP meeting as the place where decisions are made, and that truly requires parents' participation. One of the most Powerful ways to ground this entire process is to simply ask, of all the things we might want, of all the things we might work on, what do you think is the most important goal for your child right now? This one question honors the parent's expertise and ensures that our collaborative efforts are focused on what truly matters most to the family and will be of help for that student. To ensure true autonomy exists, parents need to understand through clear transparency what the district can and will provide. Without this clarity, they may be left feeling that their input doesn't matter, or that the LEA has already determined the outcome before the meeting even begins. Transparency about the process actually protects the partnership. As facilitators, we can model this by validating the parent's perspective. It's important to remember that a parent's push for more services is often a reflection of their desire for their child to have the very best. This is an act of good parenting, not a demand that needs to be shut down. The facilitator can validate that intent while remaining neutral by saying something like, "It makes sense why you feel so strongly about this. It is clear that you want Sarah to achieve the very best she can, and that dedication is a huge asset to the team." By modeling validation, you help create opportunities for the school staff to do the same. This can avoid a defensive response, which often halts dialogue. Once that space for dialogue has been created, there are times when parents may need more specific information about the law so they can truly understand the position and interest of the LEA. As a facilitator, you can direct the conversation to a knowledgeable LEA representative to share the district's commitment to providing an education that is ambitious in light of the child's unique circumstances. The goal is to show that the district's commitment is to provide the specific tools and supports that allow the child to gain skills through a program that is effective, supportive, and most importantly, leads to a life of more choice and greater autonomy. Now, when using legal language for clarity and compliance, you can encourage staff to consider delivering it gently in order to maintain emotional safety of the conversation. Softening legal language helps translate the law into a shared plan. This ensures that the legal framework serves as that supportive structure for the child's needs, rather than a source of intimidation or conflict. By allowing the LEA representative or another school staff member to deliver this critical information, you are able to remain in your neutral capacity. This keeps your role clear unless, of course, you are functioning in dual roles, a dynamic we discussed in an earlier webinar series. If you are serving as the facilitator and, let's say, an IEP team member, you would want to label this start the gentle explanation by identifying that you're stepping out of your facilitator role and entering your role as the IEP team member. So if you're fulfilling two roles, this might sound like something like the following. In light of what you shared, it makes sense why you feel so strongly about Sarah having more SAI time. It is clear that you want her to achieve the very best she can, and you feel that the extra time in the SAI classroom is going to do that. Now, I'd like to share some thoughts on that proposal, speaking from my role as the case manager and SAI teacher. So I'm stepping out of that facilitator role. Sarah has demonstrated that she is reading with fluency and is comprehending the work presented at grade level. She's making great progress on that and is demonstrating that. As part of our task in special education, we have to balance that progress with the least restrictive setting. And what that means is that we are careful not to provide a separate service if the student is already demonstrating that they can succeed without that extra support. Our goal is to ensure Sarah is educated alongside her peers as much as possible, so she doesn't miss those valuable learning and social opportunities within the general education classroom. So that's just a way you can use some sample language for that.
Thank you, Peter. Not only do all team members need to feel a sense of autonomy, and that is the ability to act and influence, every team member needs to feel that their expertise is recognized. And Peter's already touched on that a little bit, but every team member has a purpose, even if they're not always sure why they're needed in the meeting. When team members are not clear in their introductions about their role in the meeting, The facilitator can assist and support them to clarify their role. So administrators have expertise about the LEA programs and the commitment of resources. General education teachers are experts about grade level standards. That's a very important person to help ensure individual goals are aligned with the state standards, right? Special educators are experts about intervention curriculum, strategies and approaches, as well as knowledgeable about the general curriculum. Service providers have expertise in their individual areas, and parents are experts too. They know their child in the home and community environment. They know how their child is generalizing the skills they're learning in school to their everyday life outside of the school day. They provide a critical perspective, and their expertise is just as needed as every other expert on the team. One of the simplest yet most profound ways educators can show this respect is by referring to parents in the way they prefer to be addressed. So sometimes it's challenging. Some people have become really comfortable with using just the terms mom or dad, but moving away from those labels and using their preferred names honors their individual identity and signals that they're seen as peers in the process. So central to this dynamic is the public recognition that parents are their child's first and most important teacher. They carry a lifetime of history and nuance that is not always accessible in a school setting. When educators show genuine appreciation for the additional information or the home-based insights parents provide, they validate the parent's role as essential contributors to the student's success. That atmosphere is further professionalized when the team actively seeks out the input and the opinions of all members, acknowledging the unique expertise each person brings to the table. When specific questions arise, the team should refer to the team member with the most relevant background, whether that is a therapist, clinical knowledge, or the parent's lived experience. So finally, by consistently utilizing the term team to refer to everyone present, the group reinforces the idea that there is no us versus them. So be really mindful, be really careful how you utilize that word team. That's not the same as school staff. It is always inclusive of the parent. So instead, we want you to operate as a single, unified body. And as a facilitator, that's what you're communicating, that the team is operating as a single, unified body working toward a common goal. Even with your very best efforts, sometimes challenges arise. When a parent interrupts a service provider to challenge them, I want you to listen to me carefully. It's important to not dismiss the parent's input. Doing so can inadvertently confirm their suspicion that the school is, quote unquote, closing ranks. So as a facilitator or a school staff member, acknowledge their concerns with something like, I hear that you have deep concerns about this approach, and your observations at home are really important for the rest of the team to consider. To make sure to get through all the data the service provider has prepared, which is a requirement for the team to stay in legal compliance, are you all willing to listen to what's been prepared to be shared? And as a facilitator, I'll make sure to dedicate time specifically for feedback and for questions immediately afterward. Will that work for everyone? Okay, that's a good way to respond. Otherwise, this can be a classic battle of the experts scenario that can quickly stall an IEP meeting. Sometimes parents have invested significant private money into an outside assessment, and they can view it as their gold standard and see the school's data as biased or less comprehensive. In order to maintain a fruitful conversation, you have to shift the focus from which report is right to how both reports help the student. So focus on the common ground. What do both reports have in common? The goal is to honor the parent's investment without abdicating the school's professional and legal responsibility to use its own data. Facilitators can validate the investment, not just the result, and really acknowledge the effort the parents have made. Show appreciation for that. This immediately lowers their defensive guard. Educators can say something like, we truly appreciate, or I can see, or facilitators really should hand this over to an administrator, an educator who can share something like, we truly appreciate you sharing this outside evaluation. It's clear how much work went into this, and having that extra clinical perspective is helpful for the rest of the team, if that's the case, that it's a clinical report, for example. By thanking parents for their contribution rather than agreeing with every conclusion, you're showing respect without losing your professional stance. Look, people go into education because they want to make a difference in the lives of children. They want to have a positive impact on the future. I'm sure that's why you're here today and participating in this webinar series. Parents also want to advocate for their child's best future. They want to feel that their efforts are making a difference for their child. Each person on the IEP team needs to feel that they're fulfilling their role. Each person needs to feel successful in that role. So how can facilitators ensure that each person feels successful in their efforts during the meeting? Let's take a look at that. The first thing to add those drops of trust that a facilitator must do is ensure that every team member's roles are clearly defined. So vague roles can lead to what could be referred to as a spectator syndrome, where people just show up, but they don't speak or they don't participate in any meaningful way. They're just a seat warmer. I'm sure you've experienced that in the past somewhere in your career, right? They're not sure of the purpose of their attendance, and that's typically why that happens. Or they may recognize the legal obligation, but maybe they're concerned to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing at all. As a facilitator, you can begin the meeting on the right foot when you help each team member take the time to ensure that they articulate how they interact with the students, if they do, okay, and what information they're there to share during the meeting. Even facilitators need to have a clearly defined role. Parents and staff often feel overwhelmed in IEP meetings, so knowing exactly who's responsible for what helps to lower the emotional temperature and helps to foster trust. When roles are undefined, team members, especially parents and educators, often feel they need to defend their territory or justify their actions because they don't know who has the authority to speak on specific issues. When a parent feels they know more than the professionals, it sometimes stems from a history of feeling unheard or a protective instinct for their child. Role clarity is actually your best tool for managing this dynamic, provided you frame it correctly. The conflict often arises when two parties treat their perspectives as mutually exclusive truths. You can de-escalate this by defining the existence of complementary sources of data rather than competing hierarchies of expertise. So, for example, the school psychologist brings standardized testing, the behavioral data, and their observations. The parent brings the longitudinal, the real world context, the test that tests can't capture, right? They're seeing the whole child perspective. If a parent is challenging an assessor's professional judgment, lean heavily as a facilitator on the meeting process, not the content nor the person. Remember, leaning into the data is good because data is neutral. Ultimately, trust is the absence of fear. By addressing the 5 core concerns of helping team members feel appreciated, as Peter talked about, helping them feel recognized as a part of the team, as Peter talked about, that they have the ability to influence the decision-making process, that their expertise is acknowledged and they understand their role in the meeting, team members will be less likely to feel afraid that they're being ignored and excluded in the conversation, that they're being forced or feeling belittled. and that they really see no purpose in their attendance at the meeting. It's not just parents who have the 5 core needs. Every team member needs to feel this way. So ultimately, in addition to those 5 core concerns that every person has, nothing can destroy trust faster than failing to follow through on promises. So to minimize the say-do discrepancy that Peter referred to, ensure that the team creates a clear action plan. This is your primary opportunity for real-world accountability and trust building. So when building this plan, identify exactly what needs to be addressed after the meeting, who's responsible, and when it's going to be completed. And most importantly, how you'll indicate that it's done. While the case managers are often the ones ensuring follow-through, you can make this process much easier by using a shared Google Doc or a sheet. This allows for the ongoing communication we mentioned, giving the team a live, transparent way to see that the commitments are being met and that the actions are staying aligned with the words that have been spoken. So for example, possibly the team agreed that they would need to collect more data, and what is being collected and when. That they're going to collect more data on a specific behavior. This would identify who'd be overseeing the data collection, what's being collected, and when that will start, and really for how long. To clarify, this would be on the task of getting data collection started and would not have the actual data logged onto the action plan. That's an important distinction. So this is such an important tool. In addition to your follow-through, the time you give is an investment in trust building. Can't emphasize this enough. Listening proves that you value the speaker's perspective more than your own airtime. Active listening creates a psychological safe environment where people feel comfortable taking risks and being honest, and it's worth the investment that you give it. By understanding the why before responding to the what, you bypass unnecessary misunderstandings. It signals that you believe the other person has something worth contributing, which is the foundation of mutual trust. When people feel heard, they're biologically more inclined to listen to what you have to say in return. Trust grows when people share under the surface information they usually withhold from a poor listener. So be willing to take the time to be curious, to ask questions, seek to truly understand. I promise you, it'll pay off in the long run. Stephen M.R. Covey, who is the co-founder of Franklin Covey's Global Trust Impact, once said, in a high trust relationship, you can say the wrong thing, people are still going to get your meaning. And in a low trust relationship, you can be very measured, even precise, and they'll still misinterpret you. By implementing the recommendations we've given you today, you are sure to be able to help build trust, not only among IEP team members, but in general with parents. People who are skilled with building and maintaining trust are influential people. So this concludes today's webinar presentation on trust building behaviors. You've learned to identify unintentional behaviors that can damage trust between schools and parents. And you've learned specific steps and strategies that help build trust. Knowing that high trust relationships bring understanding, even in challenging conversations, what do you think you'll do differently as a result of today's presentation? We really appreciate you taking time to answer our very brief survey. Your input matters to us as we improve our presentations based on your feedback. Thank you for joining us today. We will hopefully see you for the final presentation in this webinar series entitled Inclusive Practices in IEP Meetings on May 7th, 2026. We encourage you to invite your colleagues to join us, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.